right, welcome back to Boyd Book Club. We are going to talk today about Chapter 5 of Osinga's Science, Strategy, and War. And we're going to take Chapter 5 sort of the same way we took Chapter 4. We're going to divide it into two sections, right? So Chapter 5, the core arguments, discusses both destruction and creation and patterns of conflict. For today's discussion, we are going to limit our conversation specifically to destruction and creation. In Chapter 5 of Science, Strategy, and War, Osinga gives us all of the text from Boyd's Destruction and Creation. This is a really useful tool to go through. I've also included links before, and I recommend you read the 2015 update that's available on Chet Richards' website that includes the bibliography that Boyd originally had written and presents the information. It's exactly the same text, but it does sort of break out a little bit differently. So in the presentation as provided by Osinga, we address these key topics, right? There is an abstract that Osinga identifies. Boyd's actual titles, his sort of section headings are goal, environment, need for decisions, creating concepts, suspicion, incompleteness and consistency, indeterminacy and uncertainty, entropy, and the second law of thermodynamics. For Osinga titles the final section, Destruction and Creation. The 2015 text that is on Chet Richards' website calls this Constructing Decision Models, a Dialectic Engine. So there's a little bit of variation there depending upon which source that you're reading, which source you're referencing. This little variation down here is perhaps inconsequential. I'll let you be the judge of that. Ultimately, what is, I think, important is to read Destruction and Creation several times. I don't even know how many times I've read it at this point. I have copies that are highlighted and underlined and annotated heavily. I have copies that are completely fresh. I come back to it at this point on occasion and refresh myself on Boyd's overall character and theme. What I think is important when we consider the essay, as Osinga identifies it, is that Boyd is setting out in Destruction and Creation to illuminate and explain his core thinking about adaptability, about dealing with the environment, about decision making, and about the models we use to do that. It's an incredibly tight paper. It is simple. It is a simplified model of decision making when you think about it, but it is still very dense, and it requires going over more than once. As Boyd comes back to using the term dialectic fairly regularly, I will as well. I really see Destruction and Creation as outlining Boydian dialectics. So to pull the quote directly from Destruction and Creation, to comprehend and cope with our environment, we develop mental patterns or concepts of meaning. The activity is dialectic in nature, generating both disorder and order that emerges as a changing and expanding universe of mental concepts matched to a changing and expanding universe of observed reality. So, what is this getting at? What is the essence of this that we need to do? I like the illustration here of sort of the parts diagram of an electrical motor, right? The electrical motor is the thesis. The deconstructed view, the disassembled view of the electric motor could be regarded as its antithesis, as its negation. Because we have stripped away all that was the electric motor, right? It is no longer a coherent whole. It is no longer what it is. It has been disordered. Now, if we simply were to put this back together as a whole, right, to reorder it, would we have created a synthesis in the classic dialectic? No, if our consideration is the object itself. We have not added anything new to the object at hand. However, I think we could argue that if what we are discussing is understanding electric motors, that our understanding would in fact come about with a new order. We would have created a reordered synthesis of understanding. If what we want to go about creating, however, is a new product, a new item, then we would need to inject new material after this negation, after this antithesis is reached, to bring about a new motor, right? So maybe I change the magnetic laminations. Maybe I change the bearings. Maybe I bring new bearings in, okay? Maybe I do in some way, take out the commutator and adjust that, change it in some way. If I've done this, if I have brought in from the outside elements, incorporated them into the negation, and then synthesized this new product, this new item, then this gets into a phrase that we hear in Hegelian and Marx dialectical discussions, is what's known as the negation of the negation. And the negation of the negation is synthesis. It is the new whole. So again, we're going to come back to dialectical thinking quite a bit throughout this project, because ultimately that's what Boyd's work is this dialectic process, right? As we continue to think about the destruction and creation essay, we have the benefit of looking at where that thinking takes Boyd, where we end up through his development. And what we end up with is the OODA loop, which is a dialectical model. All right? Boyd, in Destruction and Creation, quote, "Now in relating this deductive-inductive activity to the basic goal discussed in the beginning, I believe we have uncovered a dialectic engine that permits the construction of decision models needed by individuals and societies for determining and monitoring actions in an effort to improve their capacity for independent action." This is all very, very important when we consider the Boydian dialectic and what it gets us at, right? So, some things that we will consider as we go on, we want to keep in mind, is that this is both a deductive and inductive system, right? It is deductive in the way that it takes observations, breaks them down through orientation, and comes to understand them. It is inductive in that systems, thinking, processes, ideas that appear synthetically in our orientation are then added into the information that we have through our observations and continue to shape our environment. Further, our orientation shapes what we choose to see, what we are capable of seeing, and implicitly shapes our actions. This dialectical engine that Boyd speaks of is essentially offering us a mechanism for going through the Hegelian Fichten triad of thesis, antithesis, synthesis. I know I keep coming back to this point, and it's because I believe it is really, really important. I believe it's really seminal to understanding where Boyd is going, and at the same time has applications outside of Boyd's work as we look back to historical philosophy and consider it. I'm going to wrap up my discussion of destruction and creation here because I just wanted to offer some quick thoughts on this, but I think that the topic itself isn't one that lends itself to me sitting here and lecturing in some of the ways that I've done with some of the other material. As a subject matter, destruction and creation is a very dense paper, and it requires your engagement with the material, not just me blathering on about it, bloviating about it. So what I would ask you to do is come away from this video and truly engage in a discussion in the comments. Offer up your thoughts about what you've seen in reading Destruction and Creation, questions you have, ideas that you want to explore, because, quoting Boyd again, these mental concepts are employed as decision models by individuals and societies for determining and monitoring actions needed to cope with their environment or to improve their capacity for independent action. You need to take this material and do something with it in a sense of independent action for us to be able to have a deeper conversation about it, for us to be able to discuss it in a truly effective way. As always, thank you for taking some time and sitting down and going through this work. All of this project means a tremendous amount to me, and I appreciate the support from all the Patreons who are enabling this to happen. Please leave your comments, leave your questions, leave your thoughts. Let's continue to grow and build this as a community discussing this material. We'll see you soon. Cheers.